Hey, welcome back to Whitetailgarage. Since I can't get the convertible top going, I'm going to move on to another project while I wait for a nice sunny day. That is the stereo. So I've got a new stereo and speakers to put in the front and the rear. We're going to do kick panel speakers, then a new dash speaker, and then two speakers in the quarters. So I'll have to cut a hole in the rear quarter panels to mount those speakers and tie them all in. And so the speakers I chose went with Kicker KS-C50. They're 5 1/4 speakers. Box is all messed up, but there's those. With the rear speakers, I went with the Kicker KSC650s, and these are a 6.5 inch speaker. So those are the ones I decided to go with. They're not like super high end, but they're also not a low end speaker. They're kind of a middle market speaker, and I really like. They have a decent wattage rating as well. The stereo I've got will be kind of underpowered for them, but I'll eventually put a sub in the rear with an amplifier, and then I can crank all of the speakers up. But let me show you the stereo I decided to go with. So I've just cracked the box open. We'll unbox this together, take a look at it. It's a RetroSound Detroit slide bar deck. So I'm excited about this. It's the higher end model that has the Bluetooth radio and all that. So let me go ahead and get this thing unboxed. We'll take a look at it. So here is the front dash speaker. It is the dual coil. So that'll go in the front. Got some nice stickers. Here's the radio unit. Let's get everything out of this bigger box. Here is the Detroit front end. We'll pull that out. And then I opted for the metal knobs rather than the plastic knobs, so we can open these up. Box. So opted for the metal retro knobs. And then this is what makes it the Detroit. So that's the front end on it. You see it has the slide bar style. Doesn't actually slide. It says Ford on it. Here's each of the buttons. And that connects to the front of this. And so one of the things I thought was kind of cool about the RetroSound is they give you screen protectors that make it look like the AM/FM. You can put it right across the front of that and make it look like an old school stereo, even though you won't need that. And it's clear so you can see the other. I won't go for that. Again, I'm going for more of the retro mod anyway, so I'm not terribly worried about it, whether or not it looks like a stock deck. So here is what they call the motor, and this is the motor 4. So this has Bluetooth, a couple other options. I'll have to throw them on the screen for you or something, but you've got USB that you can connect to it, and then it has Bluetooth, another USB port, Cirrus input, which I won't be using, and then you got line out for preamps, front and rear, antenna, auxiliary, external mic, and another auxiliary. So in the way these work, here are the knobs. And so the knobs, the way RetroSound does their stereos, they can do kind of any combination configuration on how the distance from the knob is and all that. And so they end up just having one like actual head unit motor setup, and then you can decide based on what you pick here on where your knobs orientate. And so they built the Detroit for the Mustang, and they go ahead and give you the setup, the distance between the head that'll need to be, so it'll fall right in. But otherwise, they have where you just get brackets that bolt to the side of this, and you set up based on the bracketing off the side of this how your knobs need to be. In fact, see, yeah, they give you those brackets, so those would go here and off to the side. And I don't know, you may still have to use them on this setup, but as you can see, I mean, they give you that in here. So these will bolt to the side of this, you know, like so. Run those screws in, and then you run your knobs through the side of it. More stuff in the box. Got some spacers, blackout stuff for knobs if you were using this thing. Here's your speaker wire connectors. Comes with a microphone and a jack to plug it in. Looks like it comes with a little cheesy clip to clip onto like a visor. Then just some miscellaneous hardware here in that bag, and a stereo strap. So here's the main connector that comes off the back of the radio. So has subwoofer outputs right out of that back, and then you got your fused output there, and then these guys connect into there. Here in the instruction manual is kind of what I was talking about with these brackets in here. You could set that up in any orientation you need to for a different width or height or whatever with the more generic head unit. So that way these can fit all kinds of different vehicles. And so you pull this cable out, and that's going to connect under here. Like so. And then we'll drive some screws in to the sides. Let me find those screws and I'll be back. Clearly labeled for you. Face mounting screws contained in this bag, which are these little bitty guys. This other hardware bag I think is strictly for the other knobs, and then you have, you know, if you use that thing on the back side. Let me get these out. Little bitty guys. Well, since I'm putting in a stereo, put it down in the comments. What would you be playing on your stereo? What's your favorite music? What do you like to cruise to? I'm pretty eclectic. I listen to just about anything. Anything that's a decent beat, I enjoy listening to. I think used to only listen to rock and roll, and or I'd say used to only listen to heavy metal, and then switched over to country as I got older. Now I just kind of listen to whatever. Well, this is plastic, and chromed plastic at that, so I assume it's pretty brittle. So I'm just like snug is all I'm doing for these. I'm not going real tight. Here's something I'll have to look up. So if you look at the instructions for the Detroit setup, it shows these brackets back behind the face. And it says complete installation as described in the user's manual, included with the motor control. If you come over here, these don't line up. So left side of the stereo. I've got the L bracket, and as I put that in, you know, to align it to that hole, spinning around, it doesn't align to any of those. So to get anywhere in this, not only do I start to build unless I go to that right there, I can't go flush with the face, and that right there, right, it doesn't align. And so just in case, well, maybe you got it backwards, taking that same bracket, the left bracket, but putting it on the right hand side, you can't get anywhere close because of that. So my assumption is that picture is just a misprint, because these are definitely thick enough to take the support of turning. I mean, this is a big, thick angled, I mean, it's hollow in there, but you know, it's got a lot of support there. So I'm going to start by assuming that I can just put the knobs right on the end of this. So after looking at a couple other YouTube videos, it looks like you are supposed to do those other brackets, these brackets, and that's what these spacers are for, to kind of help snug that up as you tighten it down. The main thing is that this bracket is shaped, you can see this square flat edge on that bracket helps to prevent that from turning. So once you get these in, what I ended up having to do was this nut, I backed it all the way down, all the way flat up against the plastic, then pushed it out, tightened the nut that's in the front here as best I could, and then slid it back in to give me that, because again, the shaft will not rotate inside this. It's got a boxed shape to it. And again, these are just spacers as I clamp down on that. So I'm going to get those squared away. But first, I think before I do that, because I need to gauge, do I have enough meat here? And you want just a couple of threads, but that seems like it's probably not enough. So what I'm going to do next, move back over to the car, and I'm going to get that cassette player out and then put that guy in and see if it fits. Well, there's some far out 1980s tech. Okay, so now that that's out, I'm going to take a look at next the speaker in here, so I can go ahead and get those wires run down, and then I'll look at pulling my necessary wires from here and get that harness out, get the new one in. This guy out. This was an upgraded speaker at the time. This is not a factory speaker, but definitely is old and can stand to be replaced. Okay, so here's the old speaker that was in there. Again, that wasn't the factory speaker. I think it was maybe a combination just based off of the insignias that are on here, a combination with the stereo that was in there, potentially replaced at the same time. This does say 1993 on it, so maybe that was a point in which this one was replaced. And it looks like even this piece of plastic could be kept and reused, so I may just discard these old speakers. They're real raspy and super brittle. So maybe just hang on to this in case I ever wanted to go and put a set of 3.5s in there. What I opted for this time, though, is the RetroSound R410N. So I'm going to check to see what the wiring looks like, what the speaker looks like. Make sure everything is good with that. So I haven't opened this yet. I don't have a razor blade with me. So most speakers nowadays, yeah, and that's the same with this. You have the one super tiny female, and then the kind of normal sized female on the spade connectors. Which means you have the kind of same thing on the backside here, a real tiny one and then a normal sized one. So I tend to use the wires that it comes with and splice in my speaker wire into that, only because I don't have any of those little tiny ones, and I hate trying to make the full size female spade connector fit on these little bitty things. It's always a chore to do that. And so since, especially in this scenario, I'm not running any kind of super high-end speakers, I'm not looking for competition sound, these speaker wires are going to drive it just fine, and then my speaker wires, which are admittedly much better than this, will piggyback for, probably not for this, it looks like they're probably long enough to go straight to the stereo, but for the other 4 speakers I'm going to end up doing the same thing, and they'll just piggyback and I'll run the extension with the speakers I've got. But as you can see, this is a dual voice coil because you have the 2 tweeters there, and then the mid-range is just the dual. So this is, it's actually got like a flame pattern into the back of it. These aren't super high-end speakers. This is a 50 watt RMS and a 100 watt max. Not anything super crazy, but I really wanted just the dual voice coil, the dual tweeter, and fit in that spot. And frankly, I would have gone with a match for the Kicker KS series, because I can get this size, which is like a 4x10. I can get this size. They make it in a bunch of brand speakers, and they have a matching KS series speaker for those, and I would have spent the money on it. The problem is you can't get them one at a time. You can only get 2 at a time when you buy them that way. And so the only way that I found a single 4x10 was to buy it from RetroSound. So that's the route I went. Frankly, this is just kind of in addition to the other 4 speakers I'm going to have. Probably didn't even need it, but wanted to go ahead and take advantage of it because these are all pretty limited anyway. Oh, and the other reason that I went with this is because my plan initially was to put the 6.5-inch speakers in the front, and so I was going to do 6.5-inch speakers in the kick panels because that's what they say they're for, and then a 4x10 up here, and then I'd worry about putting rear speakers in it later. I'd get a sub, rear speakers, and an amplifier, and redo the system way down the road. Well, when I got the 6.5-inch speakers in, they are too big for the kick panel, and I'll demonstrate that later so you see what I'm talking about. But because of that, I ended up having to source a different size, a smaller size, to fit the kick panel correctly. And it has everything to do with the grill that overlays the kick panel and the look I was trying to go for. And I'll demonstrate that later once I get the kick panel and the speakers going. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But I had to order the 5 1/4 speaker from Kicker. They don't come with a grill because those usually go behind door panels. So you have to order the grill separate. So that's on the way. Hopefully it should be here sometime this week. Anyways, so that's why I went with the 4x10 and it being a little less, because I thought I was only going to have front speakers, nothing in the rear. And since I went this other route just because of the kick panels, I thought, well, I'll wire them all up. I'm not going to be able to drive them to their max because I'll only be running the radio, not an amplifier. But it'll be good. Yeah, these are going to be more than long enough to go down to the wiring right inside there, so I'll just use the wiring that they come with. In fact, I'll be clipping a lot of that off, actually, because that is, what, like 4.5, 5 feet of wire. It's interesting, I was just looking in the instructions, and they kind of have a universal speaker bracket as an idea if you need a universal way to mount it, which I don't need that in this space, but the stereo comes with a stereo strap for you to connect the back of the radio and then wherever you need to provide support. And with this being directly above, I could do a little L bracket off of this to the bottom of the stereo and they can help support each other. I don't know, I might do that, we'll see. For now, I need to peel these guys out of here. All right, see, I got in here and started messing with the stereo and immediately jumped into the speakers and all of that. You guys got to keep me on track. I got all distracted. what I came in here for, if you remember, was checking the depth on these. So now that I got that stereo out, I'm going to slide this guy in. By the way, you just connect those like so, right? I'm just kind of putting the cables back behind there. And probably should have just left the tie on it like I did with this one. I'll keep it nice and tucked. And these aren't tight yet. I still need to tighten them up. Like if they're in their final spot, I want to run a wrench on the back side of these to make sure they're as snug as they can be. But for now, I just want to check to see if I can even get a thread on the end of that right there. So snake it up in here and see. I actually think that will work. Here, I'll bring you in for a closer look as I'm looking at this next one. Ooh, I don't know. This one feels like I don't get nearly as much. You look at that side and I get a few threads in there I can tighten down on. This one feels like I don't quite have that. So I think this one I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more out of. But I know I'm pretty much there. All right, so I was able to get a couple more threads out of each one. I think we're dialed in. I went ahead and tightened the back. So now even my spacers aren't spinning. This is all nice and secure. I've plugged in both knobs on the sides of the motor, and then I went in and plugged this in. So the speaker and power harnesses are separate harnesses that plug into this pigtail that you can unplug and plug into the back of the motor. So I went ahead and plugged it in. That way I don't have to deal with that once it's in, because if this does go in now and I can grab some threads, I'm going to go ahead and leave it in. I do want to go ahead and get that screw in the back for that support bracket, just in case I decide to go that route. It'll already be in there. I went ahead and added that stud that goes in the back of the head unit, so that way if I decide to use that support bracket, which they recommend, I'll already have that in place and it's not in the way if I decide not to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in now. Perfect. Caught the exact right amount of threads. That worked out perfectly. It is nice and secure in there, but I think I may go ahead and add support, because you really only have those couple of threads on both sides providing the support. So very likely we'll go back. I mean, they give you the strap, the kind of stereo strap, if you will, in the kit. So it's just a matter of finding a place to connect it to. And where this sits, yeah, going back to the speaker up here like I had suggested, that might actually be tough unless I did it first. So I don't know, I'll decide. Pretty neat. I'm going to get the knobs on so we can see what that looks like. Again, I went with the metal knobs because I wanted the kind of feel in your hands to match the feel of the rest of the vehicle. And all of these are metal knobs as well. So they should mimic those knobs really well, and the feel should be the same. Let me pull you in for a close-up as I install these. So they give you these little plastic rings that are set up to go in there, but they don't fit in that socket very well. And I don't think this knob will even fit. Looks like, no, it doesn't even look like it'll fit. I think I'd rather it go on without it. Yeah, I mean, that's much more of the factory look there. And then here is this part of the knob. Very nice mechanical feel to that knob, by the way. These have really clean spring back. And each of these buttons are very smooth and clean. I know how much everybody loves peeling that stuff off, so I'll share that experience with you guys. There we go. All right, before I move on, I want to show you what I'm talking about with the kick panels. So here's the new kick panel. That's you know, what you'd expect. I guess like that's probably a better way to show you. It's what you'd expect, but let me show you. They say they're for a 6.5. Here's a 6.5 inch speaker. So I pull this guy out of the box. I opened it upside down. But let's move that over there. We'll need those templates because those are now going in the rear. Okay. Kick panel. 6.5 inch speaker. Again, maybe this is obvious for all you guys. It wasn't for me. 6.5 inch speaker fits in there. I mean, oh, sorry. Fits in there quite well, right? I mean, 6.5 inch speaker in a 6.5 inch hole makes sense that it fit like that. Now, maybe it's only the Kicker Series KS brand, yada yada, with this style grill. But when you add the grill, all of a sudden it's way bigger than that. There you go. Way bigger. And that just does not look ideal to me. So what I did was I went out and found these that are 5 1/4. And I don't have the grill yet to prove out what I'm talking about, but based off of the measurements I found online, and these speakers here, 5 1/4, that will fit inside of that opening. You know, it basically fills in the opening perfectly. And then with the speaker grill, that gives it the space for the speaker grill to cover up the rest of that. And so again, I'm not looking for like the maximum possible thing I can put in each location. I want what fits right and looks right. I really like the front and rears to match as far as, you know, general look and insignia and whatnot. And then I want something, you know, is at least as good as a stock stereo would sound. And I think with this setup, it's going to sound even better than a stock stereo ever would. But it did force me to go to a little bit smaller to fit into that opening. So.